All right, welcome to Touchdown Talks. I'm Spencer Taylor. This is going to be my predictions video for Week 13. Going to be bringing this out to you just about a day or so before I normally would in a regular week because it is the holidays, it's Thanksgiving, so I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, but, because of that, I want to get this video out a little earlier for my own purposes and just so that you, the viewer, you can see my predictions before the action actually starts on Thursday on Thanksgiving, so that this video is available for you to watch before that rather than later. We got 3 games, as is tradition on Thanksgiving every year. Then we've got a game on Black Friday, and then the rest of the games Sunday, Monday, like normal. But yeah, so like always every year, front-loaded schedule in the first part of the week because it is Thanksgiving. So super fun time to be an NFL fan. This is really, Thanksgiving on is a totally different animal. Really November on is different than the rest of the season. I mean, that's closer to midway point of the season, but really Thanksgiving on, that's where things really change. Obviously, the playoffs themselves start in early January, but, for some of these teams here, we're already getting into pseudo playoff mode, here in the regular season. Some teams go into pseudo playoff mode. Some teams are already, starting to get locked into the playoffs, and it's more about playing for seeding in the playoffs. And then some teams, get eliminated early, and then at that point they're playing either for the players and the coaches. You're playing for pride, you're playing for your teammates, you're playing for your next contract, for general managers, coaches, that kind of thing. You're playing, you're working for your job, also possibly for the future a little bit at that point. So, and then of course as a fan, if you're a fan of a playoff hopeful team, you're cheering to win. If you're a fan that's unfortunate to be cheering for a team that's eliminated earlier, before the season ends, you're left in that spot of, do I want to cheer for my team to win just for the fun of sake of winning a game, or do I start just hoping my team loses the rest of the way and we get better draft position? But yeah, so we're at that point. Pretty fun stuff. So yeah, let's get into my predictions for Week 13, and I'm going to make these as I go throughout recording this video. So I'll try to be as quick as I can with these predictions. Okay, so now to start off my predictions, on this side of the screen, you will be able to see the picks I'm going to make straight up for who's going to win, and then on the right-hand side of your screen is where I'll put my picks against the spread. So let's get right on into it. We have a full slate of games this week. That's the other thing. We are just about over with bye weeks in the NFL. We do have one more week next week in Week 14 where a couple teams will be on bye weeks. Those are the super late bye weeks. But outside of those few teams, every other team in the NFL has had their bye week already. Week 13, they take the NFL takes a break from doing bye weeks so that every team is playing during the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. So, they want every team to be involved with that, of course. So, getting this started, we have for the first game on Thursday, traditional Thanksgiving morning, Lions at home. This year, the Lions will be hosting the Green Bay Packers. And for this game for the Lions, I think I am going to go with the Lions winning it at home. Currently, the Lions are being favored by -2.5. So really, if you're if you're the Lions and you want the Lions to win and you want the Lions to cover, of course, if you're the Lions, you don't care, you just want to win. But if you're betting the Lions, you need them to win and win by a field goal at least, of course. So, I'm picking the Lions to win this one. I know there are concerns with both teams here. For the Packers, it's mostly that the offense is just not clicking the way you would expect for a Green Bay team. As a matter of fact, this year and certainly in recent weeks, it's actually been the defense that's been keeping the Packers in games, and especially at home for the Packers, their defense has been really good at not allowing very many points. But this is on the road. On the other side for the Lions, of course, there's concerns about just how they're looking, from a play standpoint, both on offense and defense. They obviously miss both of their previous coordinators in Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Obviously, those two with the experience they had calling their sides of the ball, both leaving in the same year. Obviously, that's affecting the Lions, but to the credit of Dan Campbell, that talented roster, and to those coaches that have stepped up, that they are 7-4. This should be a really good game. 7-4 and a 7-3-1 team, both in the NFC North, both very much in the conversation for the NFC playoff picture, and of course for the NFC North. So that's the thing. This game, pseudo playoff game, but the Lions, especially at home, indoors on turf, they're generally a little bit better. Especially Jared Goff is generally a little bit better at home. Because of that, I do have the Lions winning this. Of course, I'm much less confident going against the spread here. But I am going to go ahead and give this one to the Lions just because at home, that's where they're a little bit more prone to blowing teams out. I certainly don't see this one as being a blowout win. Again, all you need is, say this game's tied and the Lions get a game-winning field goal, to end the game or in overtime or something like that. I think this is a game that could be low scoring, but we'll have to see again, especially being that it's indoors in Detroit. I could also see this being a bit of a higher scoring game, but still close. Regardless of the type of scoring, I think this is going to be a very close game. But I am going to go with the Lions winning and covering just barely. Wouldn't be super confident about that spread pick. And then the next game, this will be Thanksgiving afternoon, maybe into the evening if you are on the East Coast. This will be Chiefs Cowboys. This will be an old Texas NFL rivalry with the Dallas Cowboys and the old Dallas Texans, which is what the Chiefs used to be way back in their history. So for this game, obviously, that's the thing. This Thanksgiving slate of games is shaping up to be really good for the NFL. Especially the first two games, because they're both games where the two teams are in relatively similar positions. Again, with the prior game, you had two division rivals that are both very much in play for the division and for the wild card. And then with this game, you've got a non-conference matchup, but you have the Chiefs and the Cowboys, both who are just around 500, Cowboys who are literally at 500, and both teams in their respective conferences, they're both exactly the 10th seed currently in the playoff race for their respective conferences. So for both of these two teams, this game is going to be pretty much a win to stay alive. At this point in the season, both of these teams, if you lose another game, you're quite likely going to miss the playoffs, or you're going to have you're pretty much going to be out of possible losses you can give up. I think for either conference, honestly, 6 losses is going to be the worst you're going to be able to afford, and especially for the Cowboys, actually, being that they have that tie, 6 might already be too much. The Cowboys may already be kind of out of possible losses that they can afford to have, and even for the Chiefs, you might, if you do lose this one, you go to 6-6, you might have a chance, but because bare minimum to get into the playoffs in either conference is going to be a 10-7, but again for the Cowboys, Lowest you're really going to be able to go is like a 10-6-1. So again, both of these two teams could maybe afford to lose this game, but if they do lose this game, you're out of losses if you want even a slim chance of getting, that 7th seed in your conference. So for both these teams, this is going to be a pseudo playoff game. Both are going to be playing with their hair on fire. And this one's a tough one. It's the Cowboys have played pretty well. Their offense is playing amazing this year. Dak Prescott, you got CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens playing great, especially George Pickens this year. He's certainly playing himself into a much bigger contract after this year, whether that's with Dallas or elsewhere. But then for, and on the defensive side for the Cowboys, post the trade deadline, they did make a couple moves there. And also even just regardless of the trade deadline, that, with all that combined, this last few weeks, the Cowboys defense has looked like they've, they had their bye week, they had the trade deadline moves that they made. It feels like this Cowboys defense, it's still a below average defense, but it's closer to average now, it feels like, than what it was the first half of the season where it was like a bottom 3 defense. So, if this Cowboys defense can get as close as possible to being average with the offense that they have and how Dak Prescott's playing, they do have a chance to sneak into the playoffs. So I expect this one to be a close one. It'll be at home. But I do trust the Chiefs to win this one a little bit more. Now I'm confident enough in the Cowboys offense being able to score a lot that I am going to actually say that the Cowboys cover here. So this one's a tough one. If I had to say which bet I'm more confident in, it is in the Chiefs winning the game. But as far as betting against the spread, this 3.5, the hook here, I'm not going to be able to take the Chiefs with that one. I'm going to take the Cowboys at home on Thanksgiving to, at least keep this close at home. If not, maybe even get an upset win. Again, the Chiefs, they've got a lot of, that offense certainly looks better than it did last year and certainly better than it did the prior 2 years, but the defense has not looked quite as good for the Chiefs. Hard to really explain a ton of why, but they've just had not quite that same. The Chiefs are always, with their pedigree and their recent history, they've always just got that feeling of, okay, in a close game they're going to pull it out. But we've seen games this year where they haven't been able to do that. I do think they're healthy enough and they do have the pedigree enough over the Cowboys in recent years that, again, I think this one they'll pull it out. But I just don't really see, with the offense that the Cowboys have, I don't really see the Chiefs pulling away from this one unless, if the Chiefs are able to get a ton of pressure on Dak Prescott, then in that case, if the Chiefs defense is able to lock down the Cowboys offense, then in that case I could see the game getting out of hand for Dallas. But I don't see that happening. I've got the Chiefs winning, but I do think this will be a close game, so I'm taking the Cowboys to cover the spread of 3.5. The final game of Thanksgiving, probably the least entertaining sounding one, but being with the news of Joe Burrow being back, he's practicing, and the Bengals plan on having him starting again. With the news of that, Jamar Chase will be back from his 1-game suspension that he served. So you're going to have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins is dealing with some injury stuff, but as far as I know, he'll be playing in this game. But regardless, you at least have Joe Burrow back. Now, for the Bengals, you are 3-8, so your chances of making the playoffs are pretty slim, mostly just because you're out of the wild card race already. But the Ravens lead your division at 6-5. The AFC North is going to be one of those divisions this year that is it's already pretty much a guarantee that the AFC North is only going to get one team out of their division into the playoffs, and it's going to be obviously whichever one wins the division. So, for the Bengals, you got a pretty big hole here, but the Ravens are the team that you directly want to take down, and that you're going to need to be chasing if you want to have any slim chance of sneaking into the playoffs and getting that number 4 seed. So, this one's going to be one that the Bengals really, really need it. But, the Ravens have been playing pretty well in the last month or so. They've certainly looked a lot better than they did to start the season. Lamar Jackson's still been looking not 100%. He's not been looking like himself. But regardless, they've still been finding ways to win this last month or so. The defense is looking a little better. So I do think regardless of Joe Burrow coming back, I think that does help them a little bit. But even in all these weeks that he's been out, they've had some really high-scoring games. It's just that their defense can't stop anybody. So I do see I'm going to take the Ravens to win this. However, this 7.5 to me just feels way too big. Way too much for a Ravens team that has not, again, Lamar Jackson hasn't looked completely healthy really all season. Derrick Henry hasn't quite looked like his previous self from last year. And again, the Ravens are looking better. They're looking more able to win. They are in control now of their own destiny, but you're going to be coming up against a Bengals squad that is going to be desperate for any kind of life. I mean, if the Bengals do lose this game, you're out. If the Bengals do lose this game, I don't know that you would be mathematically eliminated yet. We do have enough weeks where technically if you then won out the rest of the season and the Ravens lost out and the Steelers lost a bunch of games, then you could maybe sneak in. But, for the Bengals, if you lose this game, you're going to be at 9 losses. So your best possible record is going to be 8-9. Getting into the playoffs is super unlikely in that case. Again, even in a low-win division like the AFC North is this year. So I do have the Ravens winning this, but I think it's going to be way closer than this 7.5 suggests. I think it's at least going to be a one-possession game. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that this number here on ESPN is at 7.5. So I'm going to hit that number. I honestly, I almost feel more confident about this bet with the Bengals covering than I do with the Ravens winning. But I don't know. Burrow's been out for long enough. We'll have to see like how 100% he is when he actually comes back in, how he and the Bengals offense are able to click right away, that kind of stuff. And the Ravens will be at home, so they will have that advantage. Now, and I did just check because I was curious on actual, I've got a site where I can see consensus lines for games. This line has moved. The overall consensus does have this game line at 6.5 or a 7, which makes a little bit more sense to me. A 7.5 seems a little bit much. If you can get the 7.5 and you're wanting to bet, I would hammer the 7.5 at 7, 6.5. Maybe I would consider the Ravens. But yeah, if anything, I would bet the Bengals to cover the spread, or you could maybe put the Ravens in a money line teaser if you're wanting to bet these games. Moving off of Thanksgiving, we go to Black Friday, and we have the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the Chicago Bears. yet another game that lines up really well for the NFL. You have two teams at very similar spots, both 8-3, both currently sit within the top 3 of the NFC playoff picture seeding wise. And this is also a team, if you've been around NFL meme pages, that kind of thing, you may have heard reference to this. But the Bears and the Eagles, at least their fans, we've had a bit of an alliance going on this season, and that is because the NFC West and the NFC North are playing each other this year, and the Bears have beat all of the Eagles' division rivals, and vice versa. The Eagles have also defeated all of the Bears' division rivals. So they've kind of had an alliance there in the sense of as a Bears fan, 3 weeks I've cheered for the Eagles, and they've come through and beat the Vikings, Lions, and Packers for me. And same for Eagles. For Eagles fans, they've been able to cheer for the Bears, and we've gotten wins against the Giants, Cowboys, and the Commanders. So, both sort of helping each other out within the division. But now that alliance comes to an end, and we go to Philadelphia. Now, I will say my overall record, if you look over here to the left side of the screen, again, this is my spreadsheet of the entire season. This is my mid-season version of the predictions that I made just a couple weeks ago. You can find that video on my channel if you're interested. But if you look specifically at this row right here, this row is the Chicago Bears schedule. Of all of the teams, surprise, surprise, me being a Bears fan, makes sense. The Bears are the team that I've been the most accurate on predicting games so far. I have only had 2 games that I was wrong on for the Bears, and actually both of those ones I was wrong in a positive direction. The Bears won those 2 games in cases where I thought they were going to lose it. So, the Bears have outperformed my expectations thus far this season. There's room for them to, drop a game or two that I have them winning coming up. But as you'll see with this square, I am going to be this week in Philadelphia. I don't think this is going to be much of a surprise. I am going to be predicting the Eagles to win this game at home. I do have the Eagles winning it. I do think, for the Bears, it's hard to deny they have had a favorable schedule. They've had, I think, strength of schedule-wise, they rank 31st, just above the Patriots. And then I think strength of victory-wise, they might be 32nd or 31st, something like that. So, it's hard to deny the Bears have, benefited from an easy schedule. Now, that's not by accident. The way the NFL schedule is built is based off of your standing from the previous season. To some of your schedule is built that way anyways. And then the Bears also benefit from the NFC North and NFC West playing this year, and NFC North playing the NFC East this year, and a lot of the NFC East teams being bad. So that's certainly helped for the Bears this year, but that's why I am excited for this game, because even though I don't think the Bears are going to win this one, I do think this game, and I'll show you here, I'm taking the Eagles to win, but I am taking the Bears to keep this one close. Again, I've been very accurate on Bears games this year. Not quite as accurate on the spread, so who knows? Maybe the Eagles do run away with this one, and it's a rude awakening for us as Bears fans. But I don't think it's going to be quite the blowout that some people might imagine. Again, I do think the Eagles win this one. It's at home. I think that's going to help. But, even if this one was in Chicago, I would be picking the Eagles to win this one. I might be much more confident against the spread. Chances are if it was in Chicago, the spread would be smaller as well. But, I do think the Bears have a chance to, this is really going to be a prove-it game across the league for the Bears and for Caleb Williams, really. if the Bears can come in this, keep the game close, if the Bears defense can cause some turnovers, and if the Bears are able to, get a flow going on offense against a really good Eagles defense, if they're able to run the ball semi-regularly, if Caleb is able to, work through progressions, not make bad mistakes, not take too many sacks, that kind of thing, the Bears have a chance of keeping this close. The biggest thing that does worry me is, of course, the Bears defense, very injury fatigued at the moment. Of course, they just played this previous game against the Steelers, missing all 3 of their starting linebackers. They were missing 2 top DBs. Now, the good thing for us Bears fans is at least, I'm not sure, but I believe the reporting is that Jalen Johnson may be back for this game, and I think Kyler Gordon is either going to be back or he's going to be back in a week very soon to come. And I think we may have one of our 3 linebackers back. I'm not sure yet for this week, but, we're also early on in the week. But, so as Bears fans, got to hold out hope. But regardless, this is a Bears defense that's given up a lot of yards, a lot of points. It's just been a very good opportunistic defense with creating takeaways. So again, as a Bears fan, that's where I'm holding out hope, is that we're able to get some guys back from injury this week, and regardless, get some takeaways. But the real concern with this defense is being able to just, in general, get stops. And with this Eagles offense, they've had some inconsistency. They've had, obviously, drama surrounding A.J. Brown not being happy. They've struggled to get Saquon Barkley going. But, against a Bears defense that does give up a lot to the run, does give up a lot of yardage. Unfortunately, this does feel like a game where the Eagles could get right on offense and could get into a flow if the Bears defense allows them to. And certainly if the Bears offense doesn't help them out, if the Bears offense, has too many 3-and-outs, too many quick, 3-and-out punt, bring the defense back out, that's when the Bears are going to get in trouble if that does happen. So I really do hope that Ben Johnson and the Bears are able to really focus on the run game and really get that going. If the Bears can get the run game going, that'll obviously help the pass game out, help Caleb Williams. But the main thing is it'll keep that Eagles offense off the field and give them less time to get into a rhythm, put more pressure on that Eagles offense when they are on the field, maybe make room for more mistakes and that kind of thing. So I'm taking the Eagles to win, but yet another one where I am taking this to be a close game. And then going into the Sunday slate, I'll go through these a good bit quicker. I am going to take the 49ers to win this game. Spread is at 5.5. This one's a tough one. It's at 5.5, which is a really weird number. But the Browns have their defense plays a lot better when they are at home. So the only reason I am leaning towards taking the Browns here is because of that, because they're at home. Now I do think they may be set for a letdown because of the fact that they just had the big win against a Raiders team that is far inferior to this 49ers team. But I do think because the spread is just so big, it is tempting me to take the Browns here to cover it and keep it close. But this one's really tough. And I am going to go with the Browns keeping this one close. Anytime the odds makers have the number at something weird, between like a 4 and like a 6, it's always a little fishy, those lines are. So like I wouldn't suggest putting much money on this one. And I do see that the consensus line on this one is 5, which is a little odd to me. and it doesn't look like it doesn't look like a lot of money's being put on these lines yet. So, I wouldn't be too confident about this one because I do feel like it could be a letdown spot for the Browns coming off of that win against the Raiders. But again, they have a really good defense, and especially at home, that defense has been much better than they have been on the road. So there's a chance that the Browns get an upset win here, or at least keep this really close, really low scoring, and scary for the 49ers. And then Jaguars, Titans, I'm going to, really easy. Jaguars are going to win. I'm going to say the Jaguars cover this. It is 6.5, so they're going to have to win by at least a touchdown or more. Titans are horrible. One of the worst teams I've seen in my lifetime. I'm going to take the Jaguars to win and cover this one, but I'm not very confident about this one against the spread just because of the fact that this Jaguars team, they are so hard to trust. The way that they play, and especially the way that the quarterback plays, Trevor Lawrence, the dude, 1 minute he's slinging the ball down the field, throwing really. He's one of those gunslinger types that, 1 minute he's making a crazy good play with his arm or on the ground, and then another minute he's making some goofy mistake that everybody watching has their face in their hand wondering what's going on. Yeah, this one's one that I would not trust my money with the Jaguars on this covering the spread. Maybe you can include the Jaguars in a parlay. Maybe move this line down to 2.5 or something, or even just include the Jaguars money line in a parlay. Maybe that you could tempt me with, but I don't trust this Jaguars team to cover a spread just because they're kind of unpredictable. I very much think they're going to win this game, and they have looked pretty good against some great teams, and some good franchises, but they've also played down to the competition a few times. So, and even in games that they've won, including this past week against the Cardinals, for example, in that one for the Jaguars, they did win, and they actually even covered the spread, which in that game was 2.5, but they only just barely covered it. And honestly, if it hadn't been for the Cardinals being as bad as they are, the Cardinals really should have covered that spread and maybe even won the game. Because you had some, if you watched that game, or even if you were just watching Red Zone, it popped up, there were some baffling, that's a new word, baffable, just horrible plays by Trevor Lawrence and some mistakes that caused some big turnovers for the Cardinals, who weren't able to capitalize. And yeah, Titans, an even worse team. So I very much confident that the Jaguars are going to be able to go in here and get a win, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow the Jaguars find a way to make this painful for their fans. So I wouldn't be too confident putting money on this 6.5. Next game up, we have the Texans going to visit the Indianapolis Colts. 8-6 Colts and the 6-5 Texans. Texans still going to be having Davis Mills at the helm. To be fair to Davis Mills, up against the Bills, he did okay. He had part of the game where he struggled, didn't look that great. But then other parts of the game where he did what he needed to do. And that the Texans defense, man, they are something else. They are certainly one of the better defenses in this league. Certainly, I would say a top 5, top 3 defense in the league right now. Makes sense. They've got a defensive head coach. But yeah, he's doing a good job with that side of the ball. And they were able to beat the Bills at home last week. And they've had some pretty good games, even against some other playoff hopeful teams. They beat the Broncos a few weeks ago at the beginning of the month in a really low scoring game. The week prior to that, they beat the 49ers by 11 points. They beat the Jaguars by more than a touchdown. They beat, or by a touchdown. And then again beating the Bills. So, and that was, this is a Texans team that started the season looking really bad. And regardless of injuries to including their quarterback, they've played pretty well, mainly because of their defense. So I do think there's a chance this one could be interesting, especially because it is a divisional matchup. But I have a feeling that the Texans are in for a little bit of a trap game here, just because, again, they've been on a bit of a roll in recent games. They've won 4 out of the last 5. For the Colts, they've won 3 out of the last 5. They've lost 2 of their last 3. Both of those were on the road for the Colts. So I think the Colts are still a really good team. They've got a really good run game. I mean, the deciding factor in this game, let's be real, is going to be pretty simple. It's going to be Jonathan Taylor and that Colts offensive line going up against the Texans defense, and that's going to be the decider in the game. Whoever wins that trench battle is going to win. If Jonathan Taylor has a good day and the Colts offensive line controls the line, it's over. If the Texans are able to bottle Jonathan Taylor up, they might be able to keep this close and even win here. But I do think that the Colts offense, and again with Jonathan Taylor, that part of the team is playing really well, and they are at home. Again, they've had some disappointing weeks this last couple weeks. Texans, you've got your backup quarterback in, who's now been in for a couple weeks, and a little bit less going for you there on offense and just overall balance. So I think on the road, this is a letdown spot for the Texans. So I've got the Colts winning. And for this spread of 3.5, I don't like the number. I don't like that the hook is there. But I am seeing that actually the consensus has moved up to 4.5. So I will take, if you can get it at 3.5, I'm going to take that. I'm going to take the Colts to win and to cover the 3.5. It could still be a relatively close scoring game. Again, I think it could possibly be semi-low scoring. But, with Jonathan Taylor, the Colts certainly have the potential to score a good amount of points, even against a really good Texans defense. The next game up, Saints, Dolphins. This is going to be the Who's Watching Bowl, or the Toilet Bowl of the week, followed by another Toilet Bowl. Oh, wow, we've got 2 in a row here. Wow, the early Sunday slate. The NFL did a good job of putting the good games in the primetime or holiday slots this week. So love to see that, because we've had some not great primetime weeks the last month or so. But yeah, so we're getting these right out of the way on Sunday morning. Dolphins hosting the Saints. I'll take the Dolphins to win it and to cover. And then Falcons, Jets. This one's tough because, obviously the Jets are horrible, but the Falcons are just so hard to trust week to week. And they just barely, they're coming off of a game against the Saints where the Saints were actually favored in the game, which was weird to me. I felt like that was a little disrespectful towards Kirk Cousins, who is now back in as the starting quarterback due to injury to Michael Penix at quarterback for the Falcons. So, again, I think Kirk Cousins, there's a reason he was getting disrespected last week. I certainly don't think Kirk Cousins is that great, certainly not at this age. But, I think this one's a tough one because the Jets aren't a good team. They're not a good team. But they play a lot of they've been playing some games tough recently, and again, which makes sense being that they do have a defensive head coach. So of course he's if there's anything that he's going to instill, a defensive head coach, it's a tough physical mindset. They're going to fight to the end, type of thing. So I do expect this one to have potential to be tough, but I just don't really. I mean, it's on the road too. I will say that for this one. I don't know. Again, my trouble with this game is that the Falcons are just super inconsistent and hard to predict. But I am going to go with the Falcons winning and covering this one. I just think the Jets are the inferior team here. But I'm not super confident with these picks. I could see the Jets getting an upset here, but again, this is a game I don't really care about. So let's move on. Buccaneers hosting the Cardinals. This one's a little bit of a tough one. The Cardinals are another one of those teams. Defensive head coach, record-wise, not doing great, but they do play a lot of teams tough. They do have a relatively good defense. And I've said this many weeks actually about the Cardinals. They've got a pretty tough defense. And you got the Bucs right now who are kind of spiraling. The Bucs have lost 4 of their last 5 games. They started off the season really hot, really high powered, scoring a ton of points. And it's just kind of fallen off the rails from there. And you've had Baker Mayfield, of course, left the game against the Rams with an injury. They got blown out by the Rams, weren't lifeless for a second in that game. They've not looked too good especially the last 5 games. However, to the Bucs' credit, though, they've had a tough schedule in those 5 games. The last 5 games for the Buccaneers have been the Lions, Saints, Patriots, Bills, and Rams. And, of course, the one team that they did win there was against the Saints. So, which out of those 5 makes sense if you're going to go 1-4 in that stretch. But not only have they lost, but they've been big underdogs, and they've failed to even cover in the last 2 weeks against the Bills and the Rams. Again, much superior teams compared to the Cardinals that you're playing this week. And you are at home. The Buccaneers were on the road for the last 2 games. And actually, for those 4 losses that they've had, they were on the road for 3 of them. So this one's tough. Just because I do not trust the Cardinals to win this, I'm going to have this one be a Buccaneers win. But the Cardinals, I am going to take them to cover the spread, just because, again, they do play teams. They do like to play teams tough and keep things close. But it seems like Cardinals' fashion to keep things close and then find a way to lose. So that's going to be my bet for that game. Rams at the Panthers. I've got the Rams winning this one. The Rams are looking like the best team in the league right now, without any shadow of a doubt. Now, obviously, there's plenty of weeks left to go, but they're at 9-10. They are in command of the NFC, looking pretty likely to get that number 1 seed in the conference. And you got a Panthers team who, now they are coming off of a disappointing loss against the 49ers on the road, but this spread is pretty big at 10.5. So this one's a tough one. I'm tempted to take the Panthers to cover this one. The Panthers have been, especially this year, the Panthers have been a pretty good team to bet. At least for me, the weeks that I've taken them, they've been a pretty good team to bet them to cover spreads, because they've won a lot of upsets this year, and especially at home, they do tend to play a little bit better. But I don't know, though. We just saw this Rams team blow out the Rams, or blow out the Buccaneers. They beat the Seahawks. They blew out the 49ers, blew out the Saints, blew out the Jaguars. They've they've won five of their last five. They've blown up a lot of teams. This Rams team, as I said, by far the best looking team so far this season, through 12 weeks. And I don't see the Panthers winning this one at all. Do I see them keeping it within 10 or less? I think this one at 10.5, this might be a rare week where I do go against the Panthers to cover. Again, it'll be at home, chance for an upset, type of thing, but I just don't see it against this Rams team. They are different compared to most of the teams that the Panthers have, to really anybody that the Panthers have played, even the ones that they've gotten upsets against. So I'm going to take the Rams to win this one and win it big on the road, although 10.5 is a pretty decent sized spread in the NFL, especially against a Panthers team who has been pretty good against the spread this year. Moving on to the Vikings at the Seahawks. This one's going to be a no-brainer for me. This one's the Seahawks winning this one. And then at 10.5, I'm going to take the Seahawks. I mean, the Vikings are spiraling right now. Huge dumpster fire situation at quarterback. Of course, J.J. McCarthy is in concussion protocol. Assumably, they're not going to be having him play, being that he didn't enter concussion protocol until Monday. Sounds like the reporting from Kevin O'Connell was that McCarthy reported symptoms of a concussion on the flight home from the Packers game on Sunday. So it wasn't reported until Monday that he was in concussion protocol. So seems very unlikely that he'll be starting this Sunday against the Seahawks. And also being that McCarthy's been struggling as much as he has, I'm sure some Vikings fans and even some of the players who've been frustrated with how things are going, they might be, willing to try out what they got next, even though it is a undrafted quarterback. So in Brosmer, but yeah, so I just Seahawks at home, and again, the Seahawks has been weird this year though. They've often been better on the road, but the Seahawks, one of the better teams. If it weren't for the Rams being in the same division, the Seahawks would be at least tied for the top of the NFC right now. And outside of the Rams, they're, the Seahawks are looking like a, top 4, top 3 team so far this year. Super high-powered offense with a good defense, defensive head coach. So I see the Seahawks taking care of business at home this week against a Vikings team that is hurting bad and spiraling here as we go towards the end of the season. Bills at the Patriots. Bills favored by 3.5. This one's a little bit tough for me just because I don't know what the status for Aaron Rodgers is going to be. Of course, he missed the Bears game. It was sort of a game time decision as to whether or not he was going to be able to go, and he was not able to. So it's quite possible Aaron is back for this one in Pittsburgh against Josh Allen and the Bills. Both teams desperate for wins to get into the playoffs. Neither team in control of their division anymore. Bills are looking up at the Patriots, and the Steelers just in the last week gave up control to the Ravens. So now it's a bit closer there for the Steelers than it is for the Bills right now. They're a couple games back from the Patriots, 3 games back as a matter of fact, whereas the Steelers are still really neck and neck at the moment with the Ravens. So for the Bills, though, I do think they're going to get the win here. And 3.5 spread. This one's one that is tempting enough to me to make me not feel very confident, especially because this Bills defense has been struggling this year, and the Bills, classic Bills, the last few years, they rely way too much on Josh Allen. It just feels like they're super reliant on him having amazing games to be able to win. That their defense is struggling. They just lost to the Texans, who were without their starting quarterback. They lost to the Dolphins a couple weeks ago on Thursday Night Football. But outside of that, within the last 5 games, they did win pretty big against the Buccaneers. They did beat the Chiefs, and they destroyed the Panthers in Carolina. So I do think the Bills will win here, and I am actually going to take the Bills to I don't know. That's the thing. The Bills are really bad against the spread. The Bills, as favorites, are 3-6 against the spread. Overall, they're 5-6 against the spread, but as favorites specifically, they're 3-6. So really bad against the spread. And historically, Mike Tomlin has been pretty good as a short underdog of about 3.5. That range, Tomlin's been pretty decent. In recent years, it's almost been the opposite. But I'm gonna go with the Steelers keeping this one close, just because again I don't trust the Bills enough as favorites to win this big, especially if Aaron Rodgers is back. But I do think the Bills are going to win this game. Chargers hosting the Raiders. This is going to be a Chargers one all the way for me. The Raiders just fired Chip Kelly, their offensive coordinator. Honestly, I think there's a good chance that Pete Carroll is a 1 year and done with the Raiders. It's crazy to say, being that it is Pete Carroll, such a well-known head coaching name in the NFL, and a guy who's had success in the NFL, who's won a Super Bowl, who's had a long coaching tenure or long coaching career, both in college and in the NFL. But things are looking so bad with the Raiders. Geno Smith looks horrible every single week. That offensive line looks horrible. Especially that offensive line doesn't really give their offense much of a chance to do anything. You can see it in the numbers surrounding Ashton Genty, their rookie running back. He's had basically nowhere to run, often been getting contacted before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. So the Raiders are just a horrible team. They're going on the road. Their spirits are going to be low. They just got blown out by the Browns, led by Shedeur Sanders. And that was in Vegas. So now they go down the I-15 to LA against the Chargers, who are still hurting on the offensive line a little bit. So maybe Max Crosby, of course, he'll be able to cause some chaos. Which could lead to the Raiders keeping this low scoring and covering the spread, which is 9.5. But as far as betting it, I would actually maybe be willing to take the Chargers to cover this one. The Raiders just are horrible this year. And then last 2 games of the week, we are on to Sunday Night Football now. Not the most exciting Sunday Night Football. Thank goodness we have Sunday Night Crew on Thanksgiving this week. Sunday night not looking that exciting. And for that one, I am going to take the Broncos to win. Spread 6.5. I don't know. That one's one that's really tough, just because both of these teams are horrible against the spread. The Commanders have a 3-8 record overall against the spread, and a 1-7 record as underdogs. And the Broncos 5-6 against the spread, 2-5 as favorites. So, and being favorites of 6.5, pretty tough. But being that the Commanders, still going to be without Jaden Daniels, who's out. Commanders, I don't really see much to buy into right now, honestly, in them at all. So I am going to take the Broncos to win this one. But again, the Broncos are pretty bad against the spread as favorites. So I would maybe be willing to put the Broncos money line in some teasers, but in some parlays. But otherwise, I'm probably going to stay away from this game. And then Monday Night Football, another one that does not sound exciting. That is the 10-2 Patriots against the 2-10 Giants, who, by the way, were the first team to be eliminated from playoff contention. That's right. Not that it's going to be much of a surprise to you, but the Giants are eliminated officially from the playoffs. They are, as far as let's see. Let me just confirm. Yes. The Giants are mathematically right now the only team in the league that is already eliminated. Of course, throughout Week 13, we are going to see a couple teams join them. Most likely the Titans, Saints, Jets, Raiders. Those teams very well may join them in the eliminated column after this week. But at home, in Foxborough, I do have the Patriots winning this one. As I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the Bears, strength of schedule-wise, the Patriots are in a very similar boat to the Bears in the sense that, yeah, they've got a really good record, much better than many people would have expected, but the fair criticism is that, well, somewhat fair criticism is that, or maybe not criticism, but at least reason to take their record with a little grain of salt, is the fact that their strength of schedule for the Patriots is 32nd in the league. They've had the easiest strength of schedule so far this year, and obviously going up against a 10-2 Giants team this week, only helps, only makes that even weaker. So I do see the Patriots winning this one. And, the Giants have been at least semi-fun to watch this year, whether it was, at least once they got Jackson Dart in the game in earlier on in the year, they became at least entertaining. But then you lose Cam Scatterbo, you lose Jackson Dart to injury as well. Jameis Winston at quarterback is at least very entertaining, but I don't know about necessarily good. So I am going to take the Patriots to win this and cover the spread. Patriots have been pretty good against the spread, 8-4 overall against the spread, and then as favorites 5-3. However, the thing to be cautious about here with the spread is that the Giants, although they've been bad record-wise, they're very good against the spread. 7-5 overall against the spread, and in all those games they were the underdog. So the Giants do have a positive record here against the spread. So I mean, obviously, like the way they've been playing, and with Jameis Winston, it's very possible that we could see the Giants, have some big plays, maybe get a backdoor cover, get a garbage time touchdown and lose by 7. That kind of a thing. And that would get you a Patriots win with the Giants barely covering the spread of 7.5. But I am going to take the Patriots to cover this one just because they've also been good against the spread, and they've, in a lot of these games against bad teams, they've been able to win pretty big. So, but with that, that's going to round out my predictions for Week 13. For the NFL action here in 2025. If you've made it this far into the video, I appreciate you. I apologize for the delay in videos and content. That is going to go back up now. The delay due to personal reasons, those being high school football wrapping up here in the city. Utah was very involved with that. But now that has wrapped up, I'll be back to a little bit more of a regular content schedule for you here, especially as we wind down towards the playoffs. I'll get even more content heavy for you. So appreciate you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Happy Thanksgiving.